good girls don't speak their minds. They're not outspoken. They shrink themselves. They put other people above themselves. But actually, in the business world, in order to stand out, you have to be able to use your voice. You actually have to have a strong brand presence. You have to show up.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Welcome to Represented, the podcast. I'm Aniki Shuru, racial equity coach for online business owners who want to be intentionally inclusive by building a business that is racially equitable. I created this podcast to normalize a conversation around racial inclusion so that fear is no longer the barrier that gets in the way of doing this work. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Whether you're taking your first steps or you're well-versed in the journey towards racial equity, this space is for you. So welcome home, friend. Let's get started.
From coast to coast, around the globe, we are represented.
You know, I've been reflecting on the guests that I have had for this podcast over the past 12 months. We're almost coming to a year of since this podcast began, and just thinking how incredibly blessed I am to have the caliber of the guests that we have showcased here. They have been incredibly smart, intelligent, and what they have shared has been so much wisdom. And if you just take a moment to just listen, go back, there's so much just to take away. And truly, you come off an episode being better than you are before, listening. And my next guest is no different. What's interesting about Nina Dafe is that she pitched me to be on the podcast, and she shares a little bit as to why she pitched me. But it was such a well put together pitch. As I was reading the first couple of sentences, I was like, yep. Yes, it's a full-blown yes from me. Nina is so articulate. I love her accent. She speaks in the Queen's English, and it's just so beautiful. Everything she was saying, I was just like, nothing to dispute here. Like, I could just listen to her speak. She carries herself with so much grace, and she is powerful. She speaks. There were times when I was speechless, and I was like, I just need to let that sink in. That's the person that Nina is. And so here is her bio, so that you can get to know a little bit about her. So Nina Dafe is the founder and CEO of the Far Above Rubies collection, where she helps women to go from stumped to savvy about how to get PR for their businesses. An award-winning content marketer, freelance writer, and international speaker, Nina has shared the stage with powerhouse women such as Danielle Scott, volleyball Olympian and TEDx speaker, and the legendary Sally Ann Roberts, former WWL TV New Orleans news anchor. She has also been featured in Thrive Global, the TEDx blog, HuffPost, Bustle, Black Ballad, Mike, and more for her expertise. Without further ado, here is Nina Dafe. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Represented Podcast. I am joined today by Nina Dafe, and this is quite a special episode because Nina reached out to me and pitched me to be on the podcast, and she did it with so much class, style. If you're looking to be on a podcast and you don't know how to pitch yourself, Nina is somebody you need to have a conversation with. Nina, welcome.
Thank you so much, Annie, and thank you for the compliments also.
It was a beautiful pitch. I was reading it, as I said before I pressed record. I was like, yes, yes, this is a yes, 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 yes. It was a full-blown yes from me.
Amazing.
So, Nina, I would love to begin from the beginning as to what made you reach out. I'm really curious. What made you reach out to me to be on this podcast?
Yeah, so we have a mutual friend in Hazel who was on your podcast. I want to say now a few months ago. Was it
Yeah.
like sort of Octoberish time? Yeah. So I am acquainted with her. We got to know each other, I think, in summer because I was on a course that she was like helping with. And just seeing this episode with you, I was just, curious, but then ended up, as I said to you, just kind of binging all your other episodes and everything else that has come out afterwards. And what I really loved is the themes that would come up because there's a lot of talk of what it means, especially to be like a woman of color, Black women, and how that can kind of impact us in our lives, our businesses, and like the limiting beliefs that we specifically kind of come across because of the things that we've been raised with or the way that society sort of treats us. And I really identified with that, I think, just from a personal point of view, but then also just as a PR specialist working also with women of color. It's something that I see with them a lot, and I thought, no, this is definitely, it's something that I tend to write about a lot, and it was definitely something I knew I wanted to talk about with you as well.
Yes, yes. And so you are playing in a very unique field, and that field is PR, public relations. It's a field that people who are underrepresented tend to
Mm,
steer away from because
yeah.
they don't feel worthy.
Yeah.
How did you yourself arrive here at doing this work?
Oh gosh, yeah, really interesting because it wasn't. I would actually say that it actually came about because I felt underrepresented, funnily enough. So I come from a very Nigerian upbringing, even though you can hear from the accent that I
Yeah.
was born and raised in the UK. My dad was very much out there is England, in here is Nigeria. So, very, very, very Nigerian upbringing.
Yes.
And I think in and amongst that, you see a lot of like the tradition and stuff. And unfortunately, what I saw a lot is, in the marriages and stuff that I witnessed, a lot of the women, through, I always say it's kind of like a double noose because it was like the traditional aspect, but also the Christianity aspect, actually, which would kind of keep women in, quite frankly, oppressed situations. And so I remember thinking as I was growing up, oh, if that's kind of what marriage is and what it looks like, I'm not sure that it's something that I want. So fast forward to going to university and, getting a job and stuff, all of the questions start, oh, when will you marry? When will you start to have children and stuff? And I think I remember being a bit like, still unsure. I don't know. But as a woman of faith as well, I found that, I was always confronted with scripture. It's not good that man should be alone and all of the stuff that they
Wow.
kind of throw at us. Yeah, exactly. And if I'm very honest with you, I think I went on kind of a deep dive because number one, I was like, okay, is what they are saying true? Is this really something as a woman of faith that that's just the sure, tried and true road that I should be going down? But then the other thing also is I am quite untraditional myself, very kind of outspoken and stuff. So I was like, I don't know. We always kind of get told about the same sort of women of the Bible. Were there women like me? So I ended up going on this whole deep dive, and that's what was the kind of first iteration of my blog or website, which was the Far Above Rubies collection. And I started to interview other Christian women because I wanted to get different points of views because as I said, I was feeling very underrepresented and I needed more of a community. Then I would say maybe a year or so after launching, I was like, I don't feel like this is growing the way that I want to, which is when I then started to learn more about the world of PR and sort of pitching myself, writing and those sort of things. And I loved it. I absolutely adored it. And people started to ask me how I was appearing in places and what I was doing. And that's how it then turned into coaching others and stuff. So yeah, it was actually through my own sort of pain
Mm.
to then helping others out.
Wow, that is such a beautiful story. And even how you framed it in terms of the journey of the Black woman, particularly the migrant Black woman, and
Yes.
being in that traditional setting of a marriage, and then being a Christian or somebody of faith, and then that added layer of, you
Yeah,
have to submit, you need to be this way. There's ways in which you are expected to kind of show up and be. And in
absolutely.
some ways, it can be oppressive. And I
Mhm.
just, the way you've just told the story from beginning, your upbringing, being Nigerian, who, the expectations
Yeah.
are just big. And I can hear those conversations internally. When are you going to make me a grandma or a grandpa
Yeah.
or whatever it is? And just you kind of, finding your path forward. One of the things that you mentioned as you were pitching me was toxic cultural beliefs.
Mhm.
Could you tell me why this is something that you felt was key for us to talk about?
Absolutely. I think what's been really interesting for me, as I've been on my own journey of sort of growing my business and becoming more visible, is seeing the things that I have had to unlearn in terms of what I've been taught. So even just simple things like, as a woman, if you show too much ambition, then, you're going to be intimidating. No one is going to want to marry you because you
Mm,
don't know how to, you know, how to shrink yourself. And even just things to do with like networking, for example, of don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Don't tell people if you've I don't know, won an award or appeared here or done this, because people are going to think that you're showing off, or all of these things that I think we internalize because we're kind of taught these things along the way. And I'm a really, really big fan of personal development. I love being coached, and I'm constantly sort of reading. But a lot of the times I would read these books and I would think, you know, the Black woman experience, we have these issues, but for different reasons. And it's a lot of the time because of the culture and the customs and the social beliefs that we are taught. And so I think because of my own journey of unlearning, and then again, having clients where I'm seeing the same thing happening with them. And I also started to write about these things and then have lots of feedback. I'm realizing that this is it's much deeper than just being taught a system of, oh, this is how you must pitch yourself. If you don't deal with those beliefs that have been passed down from generation to generation through culture, actually you're just going to continue to self-sabotage and not be able to move forward at all.
I'm just going to take a minute and just let that sink in my head because I feel like you've written a history book for us, particularly as Black people, Black women. What would you say are the common toxic cultural beliefs that are holding us back in life and also
Yeah.
in business, but especially more so as Black women?
Oh my gosh, I feel like there's so the common ones that I see, especially in business, is definitely around delegation and asking for help. Until recently, there hasn't really been that push for unlearning strong Black woman syndrome. I'm strong. I'm independent. I can do it by myself. I can carry everything and everyone on my back. And so we are literally only just just learning, first of all, that it's okay to ask for help, but also that if we look at a lot of our counterparts, that's how they're getting ahead. They have teams, they have people that they can actually delegate to. And so, actually, if you're trying to do everything by yourself, you're sabotaging yourself, and you are not going to have the same sort of amount of growth. So, even just unlearning that mindset of, actually, I need to have people to throw things to, is huge, you
Asking
know?
for help is not
Asking
something
for help.
that we do well. And
No.
particularly when I look at our African context, we live very much
Mm,
within spaces where it's villages, we are around one another. When I was growing up in Kenya,
mm,
there was so much help, Nina. There were
yeah,
aunties, there were women who just would come
yes,
and would help you. So when somebody had a baby, it's like
yes,
life didn't change. You know what I mean?
yes,
People just came in, took over, cleaning, cooking, and it's a
absolutely.
system that we have at home where there's constantly help. There's people helping,
Yeah.
there's people cooking, there's people cleaning, there's people caring for the kids. And
Mhm.
so you do have that ability to not necessarily ask for help, but the help is there. And then
It's
you
there.
move to a different location. You move to a country where you do not have those structures in place. And even
Yeah.
asking for help is just so hard. And you
Yeah.
learn to do things independently and on your own. And you
Yeah.
reinforce that strong Black woman, stereotype.
Absolutely.
And when you build a business, it's the same thing. It's like you've got to do it all. You're doing everything on the home front.
Mhm.
And then on the
Mhm.
business front, you're also trying to do it all. But then there are those systemic barriers. It doesn't matter how hard you work. They're there, they're challenging you, they're holding you back. And if you don't have the support system, you really can't make it to the next level as
Yeah.
your white counterparts who are just, making that
Yeah.
growth. And you're not. And you're one, I'm doing everything. Why isn't it
Exactly.
budging?
Yeah. I think also just things like, off the back of that, because if we're thinking about strong Black woman syndrome, like it's a lot of this idealism of what it means to be a good woman. And so even good girl syndrome as well, that also comes a lot into play as well. Good girls don't speak their mind. They're not outspoken. They shrink themselves. They put other people above themselves. But actually, in the business world, in order to stand out, you have to be able to use your voice. You actually have to have a strong brand presence. You have to show up. And if you have constantly learned that in order to be perceived as a good girl, I must shrink myself and not show up. Or on the other side of things that I mentioned earlier, that showing up in such a way can provoke envy or, some sort of bad things coming your way. Again, that's going to be another reason, why people don't show up the way that they're supposed to as well. I recently wrote an article for a platform called Black Ballad in the UK, which was literally called basically asking the question, is the fact that we don't share our achievements a trauma response because of the things that we have been taught growing up? And the response that I got from that article was very, very interesting.
Wow, we are going to link that article in the show notes because I need to read that article as well.
Yeah.
This idea of also you need to be humble, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think there's a misconception with what humility really is. And
Absolutely.
be quiet, know your
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
If you're too outspoken, you're putting people off. Or if you speak too much, your opportunity, you could potentially miss opportunities. So there's a misconception of on what humility is or standing up for yourself. There's so much mixed messages because
Yeah.
when your parents raised you, they didn't raise you to be walked all over. There's that narrative, but also there's a narrative of don't follow the rules. Follow the
Yes.
rules. And it's like if you're following the rules, then you need to just be quiet. not rock the
Exactly.
boat, not ask questions, just be a yes
Yeah.
person and do what you're asked to do. But in reality, it doesn't make sense if you do show up that way.
Right, right. And especially within a business setting, even more so it doesn't make sense, because if we know that, people typically buy from the people that they know, like, and trust, how do they get to know you if you're not sharing your opinions, if they don't know what you believe? How do they know if they like you if actually you're not showing up regularly enough for them to build that sort of relationship with you or feel like they can trust you? So, Gay Hendricks calls it the fear of outshining others.
Yeah.
That's the limiting belief system that he puts that under. And
Mm.
it's just so interesting to see how strong that is in us. I think definitely as Black women culturally, because again of some of the things that we've been taught, but the things that society also reinforces in terms of, again, what being a good girl looks like as well.
Mm, mm. And so, how do we begin? This is something that I encounter with, many of the women of color that I support as
Mm,
their coach. These are women who are coaches themselves, and they're trying to put themselves out. They're new to coaching. They graduated. They become, skilled and trained coaches,
yeah.
life coaches, but they're just finding it hard. They're like, I can't see anybody who looks like me. There's hardly any
Mm,
representation. I don't know who's going to listen to me. I'm afraid of selling. And it's what they understand selling to be. Selling to them is
yeah.
like, I am bothering you. I'm asking you to give me
Yes.
money. But when you look at selling as serving, which is something I've had to look at it as, I am serving. I am
Absolutely.
here to show you something that you potentially don't know and how I can get you from this point to that point. I am here to help you. I'm here to serve you. I'm not here to bother you, get your money, or it's here to help you. And
Absolutely.
it's a lot of inner work that you've got to do. It's not something that you learn today. Mindset
Mm,
work is something that is continual. And so,
yeah.
what would you say in terms of promoting healing? What can we do as community of Black women who are
Mm,
in business? How do we promote healing and
oh, I love that
ultimately
question.
get to progress?
Yeah, I think that what you just said actually hits the nail on the head as well. Because I always say that also, even from a PR perspective, the promoting yourself perspective, we these days, we look at the word influence and all of those sort of things, and it's become almost like a dirty word. But we have to think about what our mission and vision is for our businesses. So when we are attempting to influence people, what are we influencing them towards? And for most of us, especially in the coaching business, it's a positive thing. We want to help and we want to serve. And I think that's what we always need to remember. Remember your intentions and remember what it is that you are trying to do when you are, kind of getting in front of your audience. I think once you kind of have that mindset also for yourself, I think there are also quite a few things. So I think if there are people around you who maybe reinforce some of the beliefs that you are trying to get rid of, obviously if it's family and those sort of things, you can't always completely withdraw from them, but perhaps you kind of limit the aspects of your life that you kind of talk to them about. I think community is also really, really, really important, in terms of having the right people around you who understand, first of all, what it is that you are trying to do and will kind of uplift you as you try to unlearn, what you've previously been taught and also move forward. One of my favorite scriptures talks about being transformed by the renewing of your mind. So I think any kind of books that you can read, like for me, whenever I know that there is a sort of thought that I need to leave behind, I'm always looking for books or experts or coaches around that particular thing so that I can start to feed, what it is that I want to do or know more of, because what you focus on, magnifies.
Yes.
I think the other thing is any of the sort of coaching tools that you are comfortable with as well. So for me, I'm a huge journaler, just really asking myself the questions of why a certain thing might be bothering me, or, what it is that I'm trying to unlearn and what could be standing in the way of that. So whether it's that you journal, whether it's that you actually have someone to speak to, really having systems and frameworks in place as well that you can tap into to help you to heal and to move forward as well.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. I'm a journaler. I don't journal all of the time, but I know it's
Mm,
something that helps me get to the core of
yes.
the root of what might be getting in the way of me moving to this stage. I'm a big
Mm,
talker. I have people that I trust around me that I talk to, and the talking in itself is a release. It whatever
agree.
grip is there, the fact that I am talking and I
Mm,
said what I need to say, I'm kind of able to move forward. As you were
absolutely.
speaking, what I was thinking of is, and you said community, community is so key.
Mm,
One of the things that I find is that sometimes we have all these opportunities that are being presented to us, but we are not taking those opportunities. For example, there might be a call to,
mm,
come on the podcast, or we want more people from racially diverse backgrounds apply.
yeah,
And
yeah.
people don't apply.
Mm,
They're just waiting for the qualified ones, or I've had situations where I've encouraged people to, you know, apply to be a guest on certain podcasts, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't think it was like for me. I didn't think it was for like the
mm,
stage I'm at." So that's an opportunity missed. And
yes.
then being in community, you're being offered something where there's opportunity to be in community. We meet maybe once a month or however quarterly, but people still don't show up. So,
Yeah.
Nina, could you speak to that? Those missed opportunities and what they're costing us.
Yeah. I think it's thinking about what we know, right? So basically every single time that you are not showing up, you are missing out then on the opportunity to actually do your work, to actually help the people that you are called to actually give that person the breakthrough that you are designed and called to actually give them. And I think the other thing as well, to your point, is there have been so, I always say that visibility begets visibility, right? So when I first started writing my blog, for example, I believed the whole adage, if you build it, they will come. But the fact of the matter is, if the fact of the matter is, people don't flock to things that they have no idea about.
Mhm.
And so I think sometimes that's also what we get stuck in, which in itself can be a toxic cultural belief. If I work hard, if I do what I'm supposed to do, then the opportunities are just
Mhm.
supposed to flow to me. And actually that's not how it works. Actually, a lot of the time it's he who shouts the loudest. It's the person who is the most visible, you know? And so that is how also we end up losing out on these opportunities, not because you're not good at what you do, not because you're not causing breakthroughs in your business and
Mhm.
with your clients, but not you're not showing up in such a way or on enough platforms that people can actually see that that's what you're doing. And so I think if we just really think about the fact that one of my favorite sayings as well is that business moves at the speed of relationships, right? So networking is a great way to accelerate your business and to actually get moving faster. The other thing also is even things like this, being on a podcast,
Mhm.
we are building a relationship, but also for the people who are listening, they are now building a relationship with me as well. And I think these are the sort of mindsets that also need to be undone, rather than seeing being on a podcast or networking as sleazy because you're thinking about, oh, what you want to get out of it. No, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Again, see it as service. I'm speaking to this person because actually I really enjoy what they do, or I want to see how I can help, or how I
Mm.
can be an asset. Once you make that perspective shift, I think it then makes it easier to jump into those situations and to then stop losing out on the great opportunities that can come out of them.
So well said. Oh,
Thank
this
you.
the strongest currency in business is building relationships. No
Yes.
doubt. It's about
Yeah.
building relationships and the trust factor. Saying,
Completely.
I know somebody called Nina Dafe. She's really good at what she does. If you're looking to get more visibility, this is a person that I'd highly recommend. And that's come
Mhm.
through relationship, through spending
Yeah.
time together, through knowing one another.
Yeah.
And you can't fast track that. You can't bypass relationships to get to where
Right.
you need to go. It is core, it's currency.
Mm.
Um, One of the things that I see is a main difference when I coach white women in business
Mm.
and when I coach Black women is that the white women will quickly make progress, even though they have their struggles, even though they have their mindset issues and whatever else they're dealing with that life has, thrown at them. But I
Yeah.
found for us as Black women and even women of color,
Hmm.
gosh, it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time. These are the goals that we are supposed to be working through, but it takes them probably 3, 4 times longer than it
Yeah.
would a
Yeah.
white person. And, uh, and,
Hmm.
and, and sometimes it can take so much energy to hold space for that because
Mm.
we're circling around the same issue of
Sure.
they then go away. They're like, oh, I need to sign up for this program. I need to get a certification here. I
Mm.
need to, it's always about what's the next thing from here. I've
Mm.
graduated from this. What's the next thing to qualify myself? And so
Mm.
much time is spent qualifying and never really using the craft that you have to,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that can be really hard to watch. You're like, no, you don't need another program. You don't need to sign up for something else. You don't need to be part of this group. You already have what you need. You just need to put yourself, you need to serve, you need to talk about what you're doing, you need more visibility.
Mm.
What's your take on that? What's your response to that?
I think that's another toxic cultural belief. How many times have we heard that we need to work 10 times as hard just to get half of the accolade or half the success? And so, again, we grow up believing that I need to keep working hard. And also, as women of color, Black women, you know, we are in a lot of spaces still very underrepresented. And if we look at things like imposter syndrome, it comes from the fact that, well, actually a lot of the times, you even growing up, you usually want to become what you see,
Yeah.
or what you are exposed to. And if that's not what you're seeing, then you don't always believe that it's for you. I think, again, it's a perspective shift, or a unlearning of, actually, just because there are not a lot of people that I see who look like me in this thing, it doesn't mean that it's not for me. Rather than actually, waiting to be invited to take up space in this arena, I create my own table and I start to invite others who look like me so that we can then build each other up. I think a lot of us um, have grown up believing not only that certain things are not for us, but that we actually don't have the power to take by force or to create, if that makes sense.
Mhm, mhm.
And so we end up almost asking permission. And again, when you are living in a society that constantly tries to disqualify you because you look different or, whatever the case may be, it's very easy to internalize all of
Yes.
that. But I think what it really comes down to is refusing to go along with that any longer and to stand 10 toes down and say, no, I strongly believe that this is for me. I am going to take up space and walking in that. I really do think that's the only way that we're going to see a difference in exactly what you're talking about. It's that mindset shift of, no, I do belong. I do belong and I can. And also sometimes we are the biggest one standing in our way. One of my favorite books is The Mountain Is You. Yeah. And I find myself saying that to myself a lot. Nina, in this situation, the mountain is you. And I think that's something that we need to check ourselves on. Sometimes it's not the external factors. Sometimes we are our own mountains and we need to get out of our own way.
Okay. Taking it in, people, taking it in because I feel like I am in a therapy session and I'm having things told back to me.
Yeah.
I'm seeing my mountain right now and I'm like, yep, I can see I am
Mhm.
in the way. I am in the way. Oh, okay. Okay. So now somebody who's listening is going like, I hear you, Nina. Yeah, I hear
Yeah.
you. You've got me. You've got my attention.
Mm.
So what steps then would I have to take to be PR ready? What are the
Mm.
things? Where do I even begin? Um, because sometimes, and this is more so for me, I feel like
Mhm.
I've got to have everything ready before I can approach a certain platform. I'm like, oh, I've got to get everything ready. And sometimes it's in the getting ready that you never approach because it never feels like you're ready enough to
Yeah.
approach. And so, what are the steps one can take to get PR ready?
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, on my website, I actually do have a PR readiness quiz that people can actually take that will literally give them a score at the end of how PR ready they are.
Ooh.
But I always say, that in order to be visible, there's an acronym that I use. So the V in visible is for vision, right? So you actually have to know, first of all, what it is that you actually want to achieve, with the desire to be visible, and also where you actually want to appear. The I is for intention. What's your why? What's it all for? Right? There has to be a mission and vision behind your actual desire. The S is for sway. So that goes down to actually being able to show people why they'd be mad, to say no to you. So things like having a really great bio, those sorts of things. Then we have, so we've talked about the intention. Now we have the influence. Okay. That's the actual sort of structure, the anatomy of a great pitch, right? Sometimes there are sort of do's or don'ts that people kind of do. maybe being a bit too long-winded, or just kind of
Mhm.
going straight in for the kill. So we we talk about how to actually do that. The be invisible is for boldness. Where that comes from is that sometimes you might not actually get a response straight away.
Yeah.
Editors, influencers, hosts, they're busy, they're human. Sometimes things fall through the net, but there's nothing wrong with following up,
Yeah.
right? Quick story, there was a lady, Kathy, who I worked with a few years ago, who it was for, what is the name of the platform? Thrive Global. They were looking for some sheroes, basically. She had pitched them. And then I saw them come up again in what was Harrow. So I went to her and I said, hey, you should apply for this. She said, oh, funnily enough, I actually did. And so she followed up with them. Very long story short, not only did they pick her up, but they then also invited her to this gala dinner, which there was TV coverage for. It was like a DC Comics type thing. So a lot of the women who were involved not only got to speak, but they were turned into like superhero sort of cartoons and stuff as well, all because she followed up. Right. So do not ever feel like, oh no, this is a sign that,
Yeah.
I never should have pitched. I actually follow up. The L is for leverage. So knowing how to keep the momentum going,
Mhm.
after you've actually appeared somewhere. And then the E is for earnings. How do I take my PR and actually, get clients and customers from it? And these are all of the sort of things that I sort of coach people through. But that's the sort of acronym that I usually teach them through.
Oh, wow. That is so beautiful. Do you have that on your website? Is it somewhere where people can go and see it and read it?
I don't actually. I do have it as part of, so when you do the PR readiness quiz, you might get it in some emails and stuff, but it's not actually on the website itself.
All right. I think you ought to put that there because you've
Yeah, now that you said
you've
it.
articulated it so beautifully. I'm like, I need to see that visually for me, for it to sink in even more. Wow. The whole follow-up thing, that story about Kathy, what a
Mm,
beautiful story. And I've often heard the quote, especially in the online streets,
mhm.
of the fortune is in the follow-up. The fortune is
Absolutely.
in the follow-up. A lot of people go,
Yeah.
oh, I totally forgot. I was in the middle of doing this and I forgot. Thank you
Yes.
so much for following up.
Yeah. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, that is what you'll get, a thank you. And I think people are always just like, oh no, I'm bothering them, or,
Yeah.
this or the other. But that's why I call it boldness, because it's something you have to be bold to do it, but it pays off. It really does.
It really, really does. And so when it comes to working with a client, where do you begin? What's the process like? Somebody wants to work with a PR coach, but they don't know how does this all look like. Could you kind of give us a bit of a blueprint of this is where you start and this is kind of where we finish off?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I think I'm always very relationship based. So my thing is always, we would have like a Zoom call, and I'd basically find out what are your goals? What is it that you're hoping to achieve through the PR? Who are your ideal clients, customers, those sorts of things. Once we've kind of established that, it's really just about, okay, now we're looking at um, where your people actually like to hang out. Right. So if we think about like a dating scenario, they always talk about, okay, maybe you would go to like these sorts of places to meet a nice guy or a nice girl or those sort of things. It's the same thing with clients. All publicity is not actually profitable. And so it's really about knowing, okay, where are they hanging out? What podcasts are they listening to? Those sort of things. And once we kind of would collate that together, I'm then coaching them through, well, I have like lots of sort of templates, scripts, those sorts of things. But also, in addition to all of that, helping my clients to formulate their own in their own words. So it's bespoke, and when they're actually doing all of their pitching and following up, then, it's in such a way that actually they're attractive and people will actually want them on the platforms. So actually, to be honest with you, a lot of the people that work with me are typically starting from scratch. Then they're not actually sure, what the steps are. They might not necessarily have actually had PR before.
Mhm.
And so we're literally building, right from the start, to make them PR ready, but then also to give them the language and the structure that they need to actually pitch as well.
Mm, beautiful. And we're almost to the end. What
Mm.
are the common, perhaps, misconceptions or mistakes about PR that people make? And you're just cringing and you're like, oh, don't do, you just
Yeah.
lost the bit, you just lost it. They're gonna say,
Yeah.
no, don't do this. What are your do not do this?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost are two mindsets that I come across. One that I mentioned myself having in the first place, which is if I build it, they will come. Like, no, you absolutely do need to put yourself out there. But then on the flip side of that is people also believing that PR is only for an elite. So
Yeah.
just for celebrities or just for, industry people who are at the top of their game. And the fact of the matter is, it is for anybody who has an expertise and is able to sort of, teach it to others in a way that is relatable and accessible. So I always give the example of one of my favorite teacher, Mr. Williams. He used to practice peer teaching. And so if I got the answer right, he'd be like, okay, Miss Dafe, come and show us what you did on the board. Not because I had a chemistry degree, not because I was a teacher, but because I was able to put it across to my peers in a way that they would be able to relate to and
Yeah.
that they would understand, right? And it's the same for us. I think sometimes we get so bogged down in looking at the people that we are inspired by and going, oh, I can't do it because I'm not like them.
Mhm.
Instead of looking forward, we need to look backwards and reach back. There are people behind you who want to know what you know, who are actually inspired by you. So if you ever sort of catch yourself in that sort of, oh no, I can't do it, think about the people coming up behind you that actually you need to be reaching back and helping. And then I think one of the other things as well is, again, the need to build relationships. So again, if we're talking about a dating situation, for example, if a guy was like too over eager and asked you to marry him on the first date, you'd be freaked out. You'd be like, no, I don't know you, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to take into account also. Like editors, influencers, podcast hosts, they're people.
Yeah.
So, start to build relationship before you even, go into pitching, for example. When you said your pitch, don't make it all about you. Again, it's about how you can serve them and their platform. So not, I've won these awards and I have all of these degrees and da da da. No, 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 no. This is how I can help you. This is how I can help your audience. And, you want to come from a servant leader perspective versus look at me and how great I am. I think those are like the few that I see all the time that I'm like, no, 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 don't do that. Don't do that.
You have explained that so beautifully. I felt like I was getting advice from a sister who's just gently walking me through. This is not how you do it. This is how it will come across.
Yeah.
Avoid this, avoid that. That is some sound advice, Nina. Just
Thank you.
beautiful. You know your stuff. That is for sure. You know your stuff. And just the gentle manner and nature with which you've held the conversation just makes it so appealing. And I know the people who are listening are like, I need to know more. And so
Oh.
I'm going to ask you the final question, which is I always ask everyone who's a guest here, and you probably know it if you've been binging my episodes. And this is if fear wasn't a factor, how would you show up in your work, Nina?
Yeah. I was actually thinking about this, and I think what came to mind is I actually have an idea. So in this year, I launched a retreat where I was like, helping people fast track through PR. As I have been doing more freelance writing and writing articles, I've been writing a lot about the limiting belief systems that kind of keep us from putting ourselves out there. And I have an idea for a conference actually. Yeah, where I talk to influencers and people who are in the limelight just about some of the fears or the insecurities that they might have, because I think sometimes that there is this idea that, oh, it's okay for them, they're so confident, and they can do it because they're amazing, not realizing that they have the same fears, the same issues, the same dilemmas, but maybe they just have tools that we're not privy to, that they use to work through it. So I'd really love to have, I think, a bit more of that sort of conversation. Yeah, that's the kind of idea that I'm toying with at the moment.
Oh my gosh, toy away, because Jesus, we need this conference. It sounds incredible. It
Thank
really
you.
does. It really, really does. And it has to be on your list for 2025. You have to chip
Yeah,
away at this. And
yeah.
I would really, really love to hear back from you. Like, how did this go? What did you do? Who did you get?
Thank
Like, I
you.
would just love, love, love an update on this, because this is something that needs and should happen.
Okay. All right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Okay, so where can people find you and connect with you? You've shared so many wonderful, incredible tips and advice. Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, so I think the first place is my website, which is faraboverubiescollection.com. And if you are interested in like the PR readiness quiz that I mentioned, it's right there on the first page. And then on social media, I'm most active on Instagram, and my handle there is at Far Above Rubies Collection as well. So I think those would be the two best places.
Everything is in the show notes, so race yourself over there, click, 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 and connect with Nina. Nina, thank you so much for approaching me, sending such a beautiful pitch that was a yes from the beginning. And
Oh.
I am so happy that we're connected. And thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciated it.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave a review so this podcast can reach more online business owners, and together we can begin to normalize racial inclusion in the online coaching space. I'd love to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where this podcast episode was recorded, the Wiradjuri people in central New South Wales, Australia. Music produced in Nairobi, Kenya by Patrick St. P. Mbaru and Kambua Mathu. Vocals by Joanne Matata.
Represented from coast to coast.